Hey, I'm Gretchen,
I'm Corey.
and we are Two Girls in Jesus. We are here to dig into our last week of verses on relationships. And Corey, I just have to say, I have thoroughly enjoyed it, but I'm glad relationships is over.
Yeah, it's been a lot. Like
It has been a
some
lot.
good, some bad, some eye-opening. But I'm kind of I'm tired of relationships.
Yeah, I'm tired of that, that all the stuff that it churns up in me, you
Right.
know. And like you said, some of it's been good and some of it I'm just like, oh man, I really don't want to face this today. But overall, it has been good. Jesus has definitely revealed himself through it all. So that's always a good thing. Do you want to take our first verse or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay. Our first verse is First Corinthians 6:18. I'm reading from the NLT, and it says, run from sexual sin. No other sin so clearly affects the body as this one does. For sexual immorality is a sin against your own body. So I wanted to know what sexual immorality was. Like I knew, but I kind of wanted to do a little deeper dive on that. Um, the Greek word for it is called porneia. And that is any sexual behavior that violates God's intended standard for human sexuality. So, premarital sex, adultery, prostitution, sexual violence, sex child abuse, animal sexual abuse, sexual exploitation, incest, and lust, which is adultery of the heart. Now, let me be real clear in saying that lust is not looking at another human being and being like, even if it's the opposite sex, and being like, oh, he's very attractive. That is a nice looking man right there. That is not lust. That is simply an observation that you're stating. That is your opinion. There is nothing wrong with that. Um, but lust is adultery of the heart to where you would forsake your spouse or you would forsake your celibacy for, an encounter with that person. Um, Whether it happens or not, if in your heart you would forsake those two things, that makes it lust. That makes it adultery of the heart. Um, I think it's important to note here, and I think as Jesus followers, we all know this, but just because our culture says that something is okay does not make it okay. Um, you can't even watch a TV commercial nowadays without some form of sex being involved in it. I saw a commercial just the other day about a over-the-counter medicine for UTIs. And, a young kid might not recognize it, but as an adult, I heard the sexual undertones. Um, and it really kind of made my skin crawl the way they put it in there. Um, Not because I'm a prude or anything, but it takes a lot to offend me. But I don't know, it was kind of gross. It just was. And I'm just gonna leave that at that. Um, this is one of those verses I looked for a loophole for. Um, I have had my past is riddled with molestations and sexual assaults and sexual abuse. So I struggle with sexual dysfunction, not in a weird way. Um, but that is what makes me feel wanted. Like if I am going out on, just say on a date with a man, if there is not some sort of physical touch, even innocent physical touch, I don't know why I'm there. And I'm still working on that. I've not perfected it. I'm still working on it. Jesus has not completely healed me from that yet. Um, and I'm working on it. I know that there are certain friendships and relationships that I have with men that I have to stay away from because I don't trust myself in those situations. So I have to stay away from them. And I don't want to do anything that makes God disappointed in me. Not that he is disappointed per se, but I don't want to let him down. The Holy Spirit dwells in me. So this body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. And I want to honor that, you know. I'm not going to say it's easy, especially being 51 years old and single, you know. Um, Dating is not easy because not everybody has, even men who say they are Christians don't have the same outlook on that as I do, that it's just not okay if you're not married. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't agree with me on that. They think they have found the loopholes in the Bible. And one of them was a video that I saw scrolling through YouTube looking for something else. And I was like, it said sex does not require marriage. And I was like, huh, that caught my attention, so of course I clicked on it, because a lot of times, and this, it's clickbait, you know, it'll say, give you a title or a theme of what this video is, and the video is nothing like so I thought it was clickbait. But no, it wasn't. That was what this man was saying, a preacher. He was in a church. He said that Adam and Eve had no preacher. They had no wedding ceremony. There was no nothing. Them having sex is what made them married. And I'm just like,
Well, they were the only two people. So
well,
how could
they
there,
were the
you
only
know?
two people, but God was there. God walked with them, among them in the Garden of Eden. Um,
And he made her for him for the purpose.
yes, and
So,
he told them to be fruitful and
right.
multiply. So, that is where we get that marriage is covenant between man, woman, and God. So while there may not have been a ceremony or a marriage certificate, a piece of paper, God did acknowledge it as a union. Um, so, gotta be careful what you watch. And if what you're watching, you've got to test it back to God's word. What'd you have for this verse?
So the NIV version says, flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against their own body. And the first thing that I thought of with that was self-worth. Like you have to understand what you're actually worth, because it's very easy to be swayed by someone, to allow your emotions to take over your mind. And what I wrote was that the devil delights in taking advantage of our raw and animalistic thoughts. And I mean, that's what happens, right, with lust. People who commit adultery, they're not necessarily thinking about who they're hurting. They're just thinking about what they're desiring, what they want, and they take it.
Yeah.
You mentioned something earlier about our bodies being temples, and I had written on this in the same thing, 1 Corinthians 3:16. Don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple and that God's spirit dwells in your midst? So I part of staying away from that sexual immorality is remembering who we are.
Yeah.
So that also falls into the self-worth part, right? Remember who you are and what you're supposed to be doing. And I mean, I'd be lying if I said, yeah, I was a virgin when I got married. No, I had sex with
Right.
my husband before I got married to him. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not, it's not that common, unfortunately, that because most of us, when we were too young and dumb, we allowed somebody to talk us into taking that. And so once it's gone, well, a lot of it's like, yeah, well, that's that.
Yeah.
The end. But I remember telling a friend, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And she did also. So
Yeah.
it's just like divorce is common. I mean, so is premarital sex.
Yeah. But again, we have to remember that just because our culture says it's okay doesn't mean that it is.
Well, and we should also remember that they didn't have to be strong as long as we're expected to. What age did they get married?
They are
And
very
it was typically taken from them, it wasn't given.
right. You're
So,
absolutely correct. And because it was nothing, I think the Mary Queen of Scots was like 6 years old when she got married so that she
insane.
could be queen, you know, because it's the lineage.
Yeah,
Um, that would never stand in today's culture, you
right.
know. But, you know, in biblical days, they were like 12, 10, 11, 12.
Mhm.
Um, and typically it was before they hit puberty. You
Mhm.
know, it was before they started having their monthly visitor. So, you're right, that is a thing.
Yeah,
Not saying that it's okay, but I'm just saying, you know, you're right. They didn't have to wait as long.
yeah,
And they didn't have to deal with all them hormones yet either, you know? So yeah. And so somewhere along the way, somebody told us getting married at that age was wrong.
yeah.
Wonder whose fault that is.
I just can't imagine like marrying off your child at that young of an age.
I know a parent that signed for her daughter to be married when she was 15.
They just wanted to get rid of her. I mean,
The daughter wanted out, and the mom had some mental
yeah.
deficiencies. And so I don't know that the mom totally knew what she was doing.
Mhm.
Um, you know, the daughter doesn't have any mental deficiency, so she probably told mom, this is totally fine. And mom probably didn't know any different. But daughter just wanted out, and she'd have married anybody to get out.
Hmm.
So, um, you know, there was some abuse there. So, you know, I probably would have done the same thing to get out, you know. But even then in our culture at 15, it's like you're shunned, like, what's wrong with you? You know?
Yeah.
Um, it used to be, and I don't know if it's still this way or not, but when I was young, um, if you were pregnant and you were 16, you could get married without permission from your parents. I don't know if
Hmm.
that's still a thing or not.
I don't know.
I don't know. But probably not because they want to keep everything from parents these days. So for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But I don't know, that's a rabbit hole we could go down for this whole
It's our
episode.
first rabbit hole.
I know, but that's one we could go down this whole episode. And there is some touchy subjects in there for me. Um, yeah, I don't want to deal with that today, at least.
Well, then let's move on.
Okay, you take our
Um,
next verse.
it's Ephesians 4:29, and the NIV says, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit who listen." And I was in a bad mood the morning that I read this, and I can tell because I wrote very just scribbling that like I didn't want to hear it. And I said, there are days when I am in a bad mood. I'm mad at everything, everyone, and I just walk through life that day tearing everything apart. Nobody's going fast enough. They're going too slow. Get out of my way. Like it starts in the car, right? Going to the grocery store, person in front of me is taking forever. Like, why can they not just pick out what they want so I can go get exactly what I know I need? And I just, pick and pick and pick. Going through and doing these things actually has helped me to recognize when I'm maybe acting that way. Some days I notice it right away and correct it. Other days it takes somebody saying, "What is wrong with you? What is going on today?" for me to take a look at myself. Um, and every day I do want to make somebody feel good. I want to tell the cashier, your hair is really pretty, or, just something to lift them up. But man, there are days where I probably need this to just flash in front of my face and say, you're doing this. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Remember what it says. Remember Ephesians 4:29. So um, that day I was, like I said, in a bad mood. And I said, in those moments, it's as if I can be invincible because I bring forth everything wrong with them so I can appear to be good. So at least I was honest with myself. Like,
Yeah.
well, when I was writing it, man, I was being honest. Maybe I should be mad more often when I write so that I can be completely like, transparent and open and out there. Um, so sometimes these verses, they really do just speak to us on reminding us what we're supposed to be doing instead of just going with that. Wow, it's kind of weird. The same emotion that the last verse was talking about, where, no, it's not adultery, but going out there and being horrible to people is not a good thing. So,
And it's widely accepted in our culture.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's laughed at, right?
Yeah.
People think it's funny when you tear other people down.
Yeah. They video it nowadays.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
what did the NLT version say?
Oh, I looked up um, 4 versions. The NLT says, don't use foul or abusive language. Let everything you say be good and helpful so that your words will be an encouragement to those who hear them. I said, okay, so no cussing is what that verse said to me. I also looked up the NASB, and it says, let no unwholesome word come out of your mouth, but if there is any good word for edification according to the need of the moment, say that, so that it will give grace to those who hear. And so that verse said to me, just use language that builds people up. The CEV says, stop all your dirty talk, say the right thing at the right time, and help others by what you say. That one said, made me think of perverse language like dirty jokes and just perverse language. The easy version says, do not say bad things that hurt or insult people. Instead, instead say only good things that will help people, Your words should help people to become strong when they hear them. That verse made me think of, if you don't have anything nice to say, find something or don't say anything at all. But a lot of the time, it's not just the word itself, it's the intention behind the word. So, like, I grew up, my first Bible was a King James version, and I was like less than 9 years old. I didn't have a clue what I was reading, but I could pick out them cuss words. I could pick out hell, I could pick out damn, and I could pick out ass in a heartbeat. Okay. I heard those words a lot growing up, and I could pick them out. And I never understood why, if they were bad, why, number one, were they in the Bible? And then number two, if they were in the Bible and I said them, I got in trouble. Like, I was so confused. But the Bible wasn't saying them in a nasty way. The Bible uses the word ass. Well, that's a donkey. That's like the name of a donkey. We know that donkeys can be ornery, they can be downright mean, you know. So, so if I'm gazing out at a field, a pasture full of donkeys, and I say, those are just some beautiful asses, then it's not a curse word. Okay. But if I am aggravated with my kid and I say, get your ever loving donkey over here right now, donkey in that context is a cuss word because of my intention. The problem is people can't see or hear your intentions. So, as followers of Jesus, I feel like, our words have to portray who we're telling people about. You know, um, if I'm sitting here telling people about Jesus and trying to, to soften their hearts towards Jesus, to become a follower of Jesus, but outside of this podcast, they hear me cussing like a sailor, she's a fake. What she's telling me has no validity then, It's not to say you're never going to hear me cuss. I get mad and I get scared. Those are the two main times that you will really hear me cuss. My son likes to jump out at me at night and scare me. And so hands go flying, I'm immediately protecting myself. And I know it's him, but it doesn't matter. It still scares me. So my hands go flying. Then I usually say, when I realize, there was no reason to be scared, and then angry. When I'm angry, you'll probably gonna hear 1 or 12, but I'm human. And my mouth does not change who Jesus is. He's still gonna forgive me. But you're just not gonna hear me cuss in everyday language, typically, because I don't want to portray Jesus that way.
Yeah.
What about you?
I already went through mine.
I know, but about the
About cussing? I
yeah.
cuss. Yeah, I cuss. Um, in the, I guess I do it and depends on where I am. I know when it's not appropriate. Um,
Yeah,
I
I
just think,
know. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I just think it depends on who you're around, what situations you're talking about. It's certainly when I was a kid, I knew the cuss words, but I did not say them, except for maybe to my sister or my cousin. Like we would call each other names and things like that, but we knew better than to do it outside of that.
I know
Um,
better than to do it now in front of my mama. I mean, she'll still backhand me in a heartbeat. I'm 51 years old, and she'll still do it.
oh, I don't get that, luckily.
Yeah. Mm-mm. But yeah, there are, I mean, there's been a couple of times at school it's just been right there about to come out, and I've had to stop, you know.
Yeah.
Um, because whether I'm supposed to or not, I tell my kids about Jesus all the time. They know. I don't push Jesus on them or anything, but they're so inquisitive. They want to know about your life. And Jesus is such a big part of my life. So, I talk about him then, and I have Bibles in my classroom that if they want a Bible, they can have one. Um, so, but yeah, there's been times I have been so frustrated, just about came out. And thank Jesus I was able to stop it before it did. Um, because this Jesus that I tell them about, I don't want to portray him that way to them. So I can, but I'm a teacher, so I've also trained my bladder to go to the bathroom like twice a day, regardless of how much water I drink during the day. So I guess it's easier in that atmosphere than in a relaxed atmosphere, like if you and I were, on the beach or by the pool, you know. Um, I don't have to have a guard up with you, I guess is what I'm saying. Because you, regardless of what comes out of my mouth, you know my heart, you know? So yeah, the situation makes a big difference too. The next verse is John 13:34. It says, "So now I'm giving you a new commandment. Love each other. Just as I have loved you, you should love each other." I thought it was real important to go on to the next verse here as well. It says, "Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples." And the very first thing I wrote down was, I am too mad about a work situation to do this right now. I had to put it down for a minute and get my thoughts and my feelings under control. Because I was hot mad, and if I think about it now, it's gonna make me mad again. Um, but when I picked it back up, first thing is, who is you? Who is he talking to? This is Jesus talking. He's talking to his disciples. He's talking to his 12, you know? Um, and Jesus knew he was not always going to be with them. He also knew that he was going to send them out to preach the good news to all the nations. The disciples had something to prove. Um, a lot of times I don't have to prove myself to anyone. You kind of do. If you're going to talk, if you're going to say it, if you're going to preach, if you're going to teach this following Jesus, you got to walk the walk and talk the talk, you know, or else how is anybody going to believe this Jesus that they were talking about, you know? Um, if they did not love each other, or at least try to love each other the way Jesus loved them, how is anybody else going to believe anything about Jesus? And look, to be his disciple, they didn't have to earn his love, did they? They didn't have to do anything. The only thing they had to do was follow him. And he loved them. He fed them. He taught them. He discipled them. Um, he was honest with them, even when it probably would have been easier not to be honest with them. He was still honest with them. He told them the hard things. Um, and he was so harsh with them at times, and not harsh, in a mean way. Brash maybe is a better word. Blunt maybe is the best word. Um, that I think it was Peter tried to rebuke him. He's like, "Get away from me, Satan," and he's talking to Jesus. So that truth that Jesus was telling them, it was hurtful, but it was blunt and it was honest, and that is love, when you love your people and you are honest with them, and sometimes honesty, sometimes the truth hurts, you know.
Yeah.
If the disciples would have been cheating and lying and fighting among themselves, they'd have been like, "I don't know who this Jesus is, but I don't want none of that." you know and if you think about it, you and I have talked about this several times, about people turning away from the church, and not just the church, but Jesus and God altogether, because of how them folks act in the buildings and how they act outside of those buildings when they think nobody's looking you know so what we do, how we love each other, it matters. I said all that to say that it matters.
The NIV version says, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another." And so I really focused in on the "as I have loved you," because he loves us no matter what,
Yeah.
despite everything that we do wrong. Um, we give him a million reasons to turn away from us,
Mhm.
because we certainly don't always put him first. So he has all the reasons to leave us, but he instead loves us.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's, I'm not telling you to stay with somebody just because Jesus stays with us. When somebody does some, some things are reason to not stay with someone. Um, but if they're loving you in the right ways, then they stay in your life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if they're loving you in ways that make you less, then maybe you love them from afar.
Mhm.
And if they're loving you in hurtful ways, but saying, I love you, get away.
Right.
Um, give, give and receive, right?
Yeah. And if loving them is causing you to sin, you just have to love them from afar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the hard one.
Yeah. Are we
Anything else?
ready for our last one?
Yeah. Oh, this is the one that is just makes me laugh.
Okay, well, I'm going to find out why it makes you laugh.
Okay. So our very last verse for relationships is Proverbs 13:20. The NLT says, walk with the wise and become wise. Associate with fools and get in trouble. Oh, I had to look up three more versions, excuse me. I looked up the God's word. It says, whoever walks with wise people will be wise, but whoever associates with fools will suffer. The Good News translation says, keep company with the wise and you will become wise. If you make friends with stupid people, you will be ruined. And that one just cracks me up. Like, it's just so raw and just like real, you
Yeah.
know? Like, don't be stupid. I
Yeah.
say that to people all the time. Okay, you're being stupid. Stop being stupid. You know, it just made me chuckle. And then the CEV says, wise friends make you wise, but you hurt yourself by going around with fools. And this made me think of if you lie with dogs, you're going to get fleas. That used to get told to me all the time when I was a kid. And I'm like, because my dogs don't have fleas, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I guess most dogs do, especially back when I was a kid. They didn't have all the flea medicines that we have now. But anyway, rabbit hole. The foolish people being referenced here are unbelievers or non-followers of Jesus. Um, it doesn't mean that they're bad people. Doesn't mean, they can be great people. They can help poor people. They can help feed the homeless. They can help house widows and orphans. But if they do not believe in God, if they do not believe in Jesus, they're pretty much the Antichrist. That's what Antichrist means. You don't believe in God the Father or the Son. Um, and the things that are true for us as believers, as followers of Jesus, is not true for them. So, they have, I'm not going to say less of a conscience, but they don't have the conviction that we have. Um, and going back to that our world says it's okay, but we know that this says that it's not okay. This is our guide, you know. Um, and that's where conviction comes from. We know we shouldn't, but we want to, you know. Um, and you've got to follow the path. You've got to follow in the steps that are ordered for us. And if you are with, you know, unbelievers, non-followers of Jesus, that person may take a left turn, a sharp left turn. And you're like, oh, if they're going that way, I'm not. So I'm taking a sharp right. I'm going to go the complete opposite direction as them. But that wasn't the steps that God ordered for us, you know? And they can get you off your path so easily. not just because what they're doing looks fun or it looks helpful, you know, but for me, oftentimes it's running the opposite direction. And that still gets me out of the steps that were ordered for me.
Hmm.
So, I need to start telling myself, don't be stupid, you know, just don't associate, don't hang out with foolish people, you know? What you got?
Well, I did two different versions. The NIV says, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm." And then the New King James says, "He who walks with wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed."
Hmm.
Um, it made me think of sometimes there's a person who does everything right. Yeah, they're always just straight and narrow, always doing everything right. And then they go ahead and they do something with friends who are always doing stuff wrong. And nothing happens to those people, but this one person who went off track one time has something terrible happen to them, like knocking over their drink. Thank goodness that Stanley had a good lid. But don't you see that sometimes where you're like, wait, what? How did that happen to them? They always do everything right,
Yeah,
and they're the ones who take the fall.
yeah,
So the New King James ending with "companion of fools will be destroyed," like it's a pretty strong word.
yeah.
And in many cases, that's the proper word for what happens when you're hanging around those types of people.
Hmm. Especially people that are, into substance abuse, alcohol abuse,
Hmm. Yeah.
pornography abuse, anything like that, it's like one time and you're hooked, but they walk away from it anytime they want to,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, and, unfortunately, with stuff like that, you don't know your limitations until you're tested with it.
Right.
And I wish more people had that wherewithal. I don't want to find out
Yeah.
where my limitations with it are. I don't
Yeah.
want to find out.
No.
So, yeah, that's powerful. That's strong right there. It's scary too, because you're right. It happens to a lot of people. A lot of people that we know that happen to.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. You have anything else for this verse?
No, that's it.
All right. What is your takeaway on our dig in relationships?
Um, it's been, like I said in the beginning, eye-opening on a lot of things. Um, got some more verses to put in my back pocket and keep with me, carry around. um, there's all of these verses did tie together. I think that I would like the summarized version next time,
Right.
because 30, I think it was 30.
32.
Yeah, 32 verses was a lot. Um, and some were harder than others, but it was just really a lot to process. Um, and I'm ready. I'm better in my relationships now, I think. Uh, only time will tell.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stay away from those fools because that's fresh. That's fresh.
Right.
Stay away from the fools. But it was a good study. It was just a little long. But I
It was
guess
long.
it all needed to be said. It all needed to be read, heard.
Yeah.
So
I think my biggest takeaway, and you and I have said this a lot throughout this dig, is that obviously forgiveness is key in relationships.
Yeah.
Rather, even if that person doesn't say they're sorry or doesn't ask for your forgiveness, forgiveness is for me, is not for them. I forgive them for hurting my feelings, offending me, sinning against me. When I forgive them, that is for me. It's not for them. And forgiveness is a command. We're commanded to forgive.
Yeah.
So there was that. And then it made me look at a lot of things that I had not looked at in a really long time about myself. So it's been good. Hard, but good.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, this ends our dig on relationships. I hope that y'all enjoyed it. Um, I hope that Jesus revealed himself to y'all the way that he did us. Um, thank you for all of your likes and shares and all the other stuff that you do. Keep liking, subscribing, sharing, so that this gets to whomever God intended. Thanks, y'all. Have a good week.
Bye, guys.